You got to give me one thing. I'm a scary judge of talent.
Adolphus Washington back-to-back plays.
The Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triple Double Podcast. My name is Corey Albertson of Triple Double Prospects. We've got Jason Morrow, as always, here, 270 Hoops, as our producer. And we finally have a Division I head coach on the podcast, Coach Jerrod Calhoun. Coach, what's going on?
Thanks, guys. Not much, man. I feel honored to be the first ever Division I coach on here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've had some good assistants, but we're just trying to move up the rankings, and we feel like we finally got there. So everybody that was late to the party, you can always tell them you were the first one. Like I still remember the first couple guys when I started a website that hit me up. So I hold those guys close. So you're one of those guys, Coach.
Well, I appreciate that, Corey.
All right. Coach Jerrod Calhoun is entering his second season as a Division I head coach at Youngstown State University in the Horizon League. Prior to Youngstown State, Coach Calhoun spent 5 seasons at Fairmont State, a Division II powerhouse in West Virginia, where his teams won at least 20 games in all 5 seasons, made the NCAA tournament 4 times, and in 2016-2017 won over 30 games and finished as Division II national runners-up. So they had a great program there. Coach, I know you're from Cleveland. I know you graduated from my alma mater, University of Cincinnati. You're a Hugs guy. What else do we miss about your background?
You know what? I think you hit it on the head, Corey. Just really spent a third of my life in the state of West Virginia, if you really think about it, with 5 years at West Virginia and 5 years at Fairmont. So it's good to be back at Northeast Ohio. I have so many roots up this way, and just trying to build a great program here at Youngstown.
Absolutely. One thing with this podcast, me being a Cincinnati guy, we got a lot of Cincinnati listeners. People are big Hugs fans. I grew up on Hugs. So, what was it like just spending all that time, whether it was at UC or West Virginia, with Coach Huggins?
Yeah, I kind of knew that question would come up, Corey, because I know you're a Bearcat fan and a Hugs fan. You know what? It's unbelievable. And one thing about working for Hugs is, it never really stops. That's the great thing about who he is not only a coach, but more importantly, as a person. Anytime you need advice, even beyond basketball, Coach Huggins is one of those guys. He's always going to pick up the phone. He's going to take your call and give you that advice. I can remember in my first couple of years at Fairmont State calling him often, and he gave me some great advice. But you know what? He's just a people's person. Everywhere he's been, whether it was Walsh, Akron, Cincinnati, obviously West Virginia, and Kansas State. He's just a legend because it's how he treats people, and that's what I think makes Coach Huggins a special person.
Well, when you look at anybody in great college coaches, Mike Krzyzewski, John Calipari, Bob Huggins, Tom Izzo, any of them, you got a couple things in common, which is, number one, they push the guys further than they ever knew that they could be pushed. And then number two, that there's no mystery that once basketball practice ends, that they just love the hell out of their guys. And, Hugs is, because people in Cincinnati know him a little more intimately, is one of the great examples of that.
Oh, I think absolutely. Hugs is a Hall of Famer. He's not in there yet, but I don't think it's a matter of is he going to get in. I think it's just a matter of when. He's got West Virginia on the brink of another Final Four. I think they're going to be really good here the next couple of years. He built a $30 million practice facility, probably the nicest in the country. It was just an awesome time working with him at Cincinnati and West Virginia, and I've learned so much. And a lot of what we try to do is a direct reflection of my time with him.
You certainly, I've observed at Fairmont and Youngstown, in terms of the guys that you recruit, they're guys that would fit, the model of the personality, the type of guys that he's had. So, well, let's. I'll drop the fanboy thing for you real quick, and I'll get to the theme of today's podcast, Coach. And today's podcast, like I told you, we want to talk about the transition from high school basketball to college basketball, and specifically within that transition, looking at the practice, the beginning of the season. There's no games. You're being overwhelmed by the complexity of college basketball, the intensity of college basketball, and what do you find this time of year as you start to get guys into practice?
Corey, you find out a lot. One of the things we try to do is recruit guys that come from great programs. So a lot of these high school players nowadays, not in just the state of Ohio, but nationwide, there's some great high school coaches. So anytime you can get involved with a prospect, you really want to look at that. I try to get out to a lot of high school practices. That way I have an idea of what I'm getting when they come in. Has a guy been coached? Does he understand certain concepts? But it is a major learning curve. I think the NCAA got it right with the new rules in the summer, with allowing us 8 weeks to work with our kids in the summer. That's really helping a lot of these incoming freshmen, not only on the court, but I think off the court as far as their classes. And then with the strength and conditioning
structure.
Yeah, the structure and the strength and conditioning at each university. I think what you find is a lot of kids learn at different paces. We've got 4 freshmen going through it right now, and it's not easy. But that's the one thing that's great about coaching college players is you get to see the progression from year to year. And it's hard. That freshman year, during our recruiting pitch, we tell them it's going to be one of the hardest years of their life, just because of structure and because of this is a new system. And it's a lot harder than high school.
It's a lot harder than high school in terms of, again, the complexity of it. You're going to be running 5 times more, set offensive plays than you have in the past. No matter where you went to high school, you're going to be doing much, much more game prep for individual opponents than you've ever done. And just the terminology and all that, again, it's overwhelming. And what are some of the guys who get it are obviously some of the guys who do come from great high school programs, but then also some of the guys who are just kind of, when I worked for Coach Cronin, he used to say that the guys who are as freshmen are willing to check their egos.
Yeah, I think those guys are the ones that are really successful. Film study, nothing against high school basketball, but a lot of times they don't have the amount of time and the resources that college coaches have with the film. Although there are a lot of changes in high school that, a lot of these high school teams are using as far as their film breakdown. But, that's a big component of it. And also when in high school, you're not asked to play as much defense as you are in college because you don't really want your best player getting in foul trouble. So now I think that's the biggest adjustment, whether it's rotations, whether it's ball screen coverage, whether it's transition defense, or being able to just sit down and guard somebody for the first time in their life. It's hard. So we try to spend a lot of time just learning how to guard the basketball, different coverages on ball screen defense, and just communicating. I thought our football coach the other day had a great comment. He said he wished he could bring all the phones of his players onto the field and that maybe they'd be able to communicate better. And I don't think it's just Coach Pelini. I think it's a nationwide thing. But for freshmen, Corey, especially, just being able to communicate on a play-by-play basis is very new to a lot of these kids, not only in Youngstown, but I think across the country.
Right. And again, beyond that, it's, the attention to detail and just, the fact that you're going to push them. And we just had a podcast with our club Bruce at Huntington Prep, and we were talking about guys for the first time ever maybe being exposed to the bench. They're not the best player in the gym every single day at practice, which, is an advantage that they were used to at the high school level. And now they've got to do that at the college level. And, looking at you guys, you and your staff, you guys won so many games at Fairmont State. You guys are so successful. And then you come to Youngstown State, which is, it's a great league. There's a lot of talent in Ohio. There's a lot of Division I schools in Ohio. There's some great natural rivalries, but, Youngstown State hasn't had a ton of success in the league. So how did you guys and your staff just kind of look and say, hey, we're going to change the culture beginning with early season practice in year 1 and now into year 2?
Those are, 2-part question. I think, the first thing, as far as freshmen on the bench, we want to play a lot of guys. So I think one of the things that's been attractive to a lot of the kids we're recruiting, we're going to play between 9 and 11 guys at all times just from our style of play. So, a lot of times you see a freshman coming in, maybe first-team All-State guy, no matter where it is. It could be Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina. Now you're asking them to come off the bench. That's a different role. That takes some adjusting. There's a feeling out process, I think, of all freshmen that they got to learn to trust the system that they've decided to play in. But I think the hungry players, I think the guys that understand that you're trying to change a culture, they buy in, whether they're a starter or whether they come off the bench. And then the other part of the question, how you're going to change a culture at Youngstown. I think each year you're going to get better. You have a system you want to play. You have a style of play. You're going to try to go out and recruit those type of players. We've been very, very fortunate to get a lot of the guys that we targeted. Of course, you're not going to get all the ones that you wanted to target, but we feel very, very comfortable with the roster that we have in year two. Now we just need to grow with this team and get them better. We only have one senior on our roster. Having a president, President Jim Tressel, having an athletic director that played college sports, having a community like Youngstown that we finished fourth in the league in attendance. These people want to win. They have committed to basketball. We've got great football traditions. So really a sleeping giant. I think the Horizon League is a very good league. We've got to be able to go out and win some recruiting battles. I think we have. And we got to find those guys that come in a little bit hungry and with a little bit of chip on their shoulder.
And where I've seen it work in terms of college basketball, when I was at Cincinnati, when I've gone to practice at Xavier or Miami or other places locally, I've seen it work where you look at freshmen and no matter if you're a McDonald's All-American or if you're somebody who only had one scholarship offer and that's the school you're at, you're going to have adversity. That goes with, that's part of it. But where it works is when you have assistant coaches who can go to those kids and say, listen, coach isn't being hard on you because he hates you. He's being hard on you because he knows what your upside is. And then what you need to understand as a player is if you're going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself, you're not going to get very far. If you're going to embrace the challenge, then you're going to have an opportunity. And you've got to, again, check your ego and convince yourself that the ranking you came in with, the high school stats you came in with, the fact that you maybe won a high school state championship to the other guys on your high school roster, your college roster doesn't really mean anything because all those guys did that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at all levels, Corey, whether it's high school, college, the NBA, you got to constantly grow. That's one of the key components in our program. One of our standards, one of the key things we try to talk with our guys about is growth. You got to try to grow. You got to try to get better each and every day. You got to do the small things. And then you got to trust the plan that's in place to try to get each individual guy better, and then the team will collectively get better. But that's why I love college. I just love seeing guys grow and get better. You see it all across the country. Guys come in as freshmen, may play 10, 15 minutes, and then by their senior year, they're really good players, and you got to earn your stripes every day. I think the best teams have great competition, but teams are pulling for one another, and that's where we're trying to get to.
Unfortunately, I think one thing we struggle with nowadays is it's hard to get guys to buy into that as people are so quick to transfer.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think all college basketball coaches are talking about, thinking about. We're seeing it firsthand nationwide. But I think every guy transfers for a different reason. Some go down, some go up. Some don't like the system that they're in. There's each circumstance is a little bit different. You got to find the guys that kind of fit your style, that are happy. But players have options now. I'm a proponent of, I think these kids should have options. They should be able to transfer if they're not happy. A lot of coaches at our level see their players go on and be graduate transfers and play at the highest level. I would never hold any ill will toward any player that does that. Of course, you want them on your team, but it's just something that's changing. It's something that we have to talk about. It's something you got to be aware of. And, hopefully you're in that position where your kids can do that. But we'll have to cross that line if it does happen to us.
And sometimes as scouts, the world I'm in, as coaches, the world you're in, you look in the mirror after, a month of practice, you get ready to play your first game, and you look at a freshman and say, man, you know what, maybe we were a little off on that one. And, he's probably not quite suited for our level. And if he wants to be somebody who's going to earn significant minutes, then down the road is probably best for him to transfer down. And sometimes it goes the other way where you're like, man, I can't believe we got this kid. He's really, really good.
Yeah, I think, Corey, most of the kids end up at the level that they're supposed to be at. I think kids want to have success. Kids want to be happy. Most kids are happy when they're scoring or playing or, being a big part of something that makes them happy. So I think a lot of these guys end up at the right level. They have great careers. Mid-major basketball is a tremendous level, whether it's the MAC conference, the Horizon. There are some great players that have not only had great college careers, but went on and played in the NBA. So our biggest thing is come and have a career, and have a big impact on a program rather than be a role player. And I think the majority of our guys are very, very happy, on and off the floor.
Absolutely. But when you get guys, whether they're embracing it or whether they're frustrated, in your career of coaching as a head coach, as an assistant coach, guys you've recruited, how do you handle kind of the process throughout the year of kids not playing? I mean, obviously for 99% of these kids, they've played the whole game, their whole career. So when they come to you, how do you handle these conversations on, not just here's what we need to work on in terms of improving at basketball? I mean, that's obvious. Kids, even through their frustration, can see that, but just the mentality, how do you kind of coax their mindset when you're looking at 18, 19-year-old, maybe 20-year-old kids?
Well, a lot of time, Corey, the outside influence, whether it's social media, whether it's a mom, dad, uncle, AAU coach, high school coach, it's the majority of the time they're hearing it from outside influences. I think kids are really, really smart. I think most kids realize where they stand on the depth chart. So you got to have open dialogue. You have to be honest, not only with the player, but also the parents. And then they have to trust the process that, they're going to earn their stripes. They're going to get their playing time. But honestly, that's a big reason why I decided to press, because I think, when you press, you're going to play 9 or 10 guys. So you're going to have a lot of guys in your rotation. A lot of guys are going to be happy. If you only play 6 or 7 guys, those other 6 or 7 that are on scholarship that aren't playing, that's very, very hard to sit there and not be a part of it on game nights. So we try to stretch as many guys as we can, redshirt some guys, maybe sit out a guy, because you're only going to play 10 or 11 guys. So 12 and 13, we hope those guys are going to develop and get better, or we're going to sit them out. And then when it's their time to play, they're ready to go.
I've heard John Calipari say it. Years ago, I took a kid on an official visit to Virginia Tech when Seth Greenberg was the coach, and he said it. And they've said, unless you absolutely feel the necessity, there's not a great need to have 13 scholarship kids. Sometimes you're better off having 11 scholarship kids because you're going to have a better chance of making everybody happy.
Yeah, I've heard that. I wish we could have 15. I'm probably on the
right.
other
As a
end.
coach, you always want more.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum, Corey. I like to have a lot of good players, but no, he's probably right, in all honesty. But I think it makes practice really competitive when those kids know, hey, if I'm in the top 10, I'm going to get a lot of playing time, and that's what we try to do in our system. The way we play really fast on both ends. So freshmen have a great opportunity to come in and play right away. We have 2 from the state of Ohio, Darius Quisenberry and Jelani Simmons, Dayton and Columbus. And these 2 guys have a chance to get on the court right away, where most programs, that only play 6, 7 guys, they would probably have to wait a little bit longer than they will here in Youngstown.
Well, off topic, but you talked about guys who come from great high school programs, and I know Jelani Simmons' team had a really good senior year. I'm not super familiar with Beechcroft, but with Quisenberry, coming from Huber Heights Wayne, he's a little more ready. But one thing in looking at a pressing basketball team or a team that plays fast on both ends of the floor is it helps you early on in practice in terms of video after practice, before practice, in showing a kid firsthand. Video is one of the great teachers on, you think you're playing hard and you're playing hard based on the high school standard, but based on the standard to compete at a mid-major program that's trying to move up the ladder, within the mid-major scene in Ohio, as well as the Horizon League, you're not playing as hard as you're going to eventually need to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can't really hide when you press. You got to be able to guard the ball. You have to be able to anticipate. But more importantly, you got to be in tremendous shape. And, one of the things we try to do is play every play. Coach Huggins, for a long, long time, has had a great saying, you don't want to waste days. And I've been pretty fortunate, to be part of his staff with the Final Four. NAI at Walsh University won the national championship, and then at Fairmont State we were national runner-up. All three of those teams had very similar characteristics, obviously totally different levels, but those teams did not waste many days. And then you start talking about the amount of possessions in a day at practice. You're trying to get your young kids, your freshmen especially, to get them to understand, don't waste those plays. You can't take plays off. Whether that's offense, defense, and then transitioning from drill to drill. What I have found is most players coming in from high school to college, they're not used to not only the intensity of the practice, but the transition from drill to drill, maybe a 2-minute water break, but hey, guess what? We're on to the next thing. So it really tests them physically, because you may be working on ball screen coverage and then boom, now you're getting into transition offense. So I think, strategically, having a young team like we have, we're trying to make this thing as easy on our guys as we can in our teaching.
Right. I mean, I know with watching how Coach Cronin used to do it in terms of let's talk about preseason individual stuff. You're doing ball handling and you're doing it where it's to the point where he wants you to go hard enough that sometimes in the drill you're going to lose the ball, and it's okay to make a mistake. But if you make a mistake, you run your ass over there, you go get the ball, and you hop back in line. And it's the fact that mistakes are going to happen. We're overwhelming you with a lot of information, but if you're willing to learn, we're going to teach you.
Absolutely, and I think that's why mixed teams are the way they are. And I think it helps when you have veteran leadership. You have guys within your program that can teach the younger guys. This is the level. This is how hard we have to go. We're really fortunate. We have two really good sophomores that got a ton of playing time last year as freshmen, and Naz Bohannon from Lorraine and Garrett Covington. These two young men, they went through an entire season. They played a lot of minutes as freshmen. Well, now as you see their progression as sophomores, they're able to grab the other four freshmen that we have on the roster and say, this is how hard we have to go. We don't want to take a play off. We've got to finish plays, whether it's contesting a shot, boxing out, making sure we're finishing the right way.
Absolutely. But I think we've hit the big part of the puzzle, but then you can't forget about the other piece of the puzzle, which is this. You got kids coming into college and basketball's putting a lot of pressure on them. They're under more of a microscope now that you're, being on scholarship they might get negative press or have people say things about them that doesn't happen in high school. And you've got the other obstacles, the other distractions. You've got girls, you've got the academic side, you've got living away from home. I mean, what are some of the other non-basketball obstacles that you as coaches have to provide structure, and how do you deal with that with kids?
Yeah, I think once again it comes back to communication. I think it comes back with recruiting the right people, the right mindset. We talk about mindset in our program quite a bit. And just having those older guys mentoring, because the reality of it is, Corey, we're only going to be around our guys so many hours in a day. So from 8 till 8 in the morning, we're not going to be with our guys. But we have to have that trust with them, the communication, and really the veteran leadership to make sure guys are doing what they're supposed to do off the court. Academics are a huge key. Getting the right student athletes. We're really fortunate. We've got a great We have great academic programs. Monitoring that, we try to assign each coach 2 to 3 players, so they're in charge of kind of tracking their progress week to week, making sure the freshmen are transitioning, managing your time. I think time management, Corey, is one of those things that is so much different than high school. Some days you may have 3 classes, where other days you may only have 1. So you've got to manage that time. Then social media, I think you got to be smart the way, all these guys have their own brand. All these guys are followed not only by Youngstown State fans, but also, their high school, their friends. So you have to be, educate them on that piece. There's just a lot that goes into it, not only coaching, but, being a student athlete. I always think, companies and businesses are really smart to hire these student athletes, not just basketball, because they're used to being part of a team. And the fact of the matter is, none of us have gotten where we're trying to get to or going to get to without the help of others. So I think college basketball and college sports in general teaches so much.
Absolutely. But then even, no matter how great of a kid you are, how great of a family you come from, an organized high school program, nothing can prepare you for your first semester at college. And it's something you hear about your whole life, in media and just normal culture. And you've got to find a balance with, you want your kids to be focused on basketball and academics. The two things are there. They're there to get an education. Most of them are not going to, make a career playing professional basketball on any level. So you need them there for academics. But at the same time, you also want them to have some fun. You want them to experience the social aspects of college. And, that's an experience that they need to have in their lives and can't be substituted through basketball.
There's no question. I mean, I think, you probably feel the same way. I know I do. College was the best 4 years of my life. Really, in 5 years. I wish I could have made it 8, but, I had to get out in the real world and get a job. But yeah, I think just, the constant communication, not only with the student athlete, but also with the parents. We try to check in with them every couple of weeks, give them an update, invite them to different activities, and just constantly structure and positive and trying to help these guys, reach their dreams. Really, that's our job as coaches. We've got to push them. We've got to get them outside their comfort zone at times, but in the end, it's really about the relationships you have with your guys.
Well, you said an interesting thing with the parents, and there's a lot of different schools of thought with coaches on how to deal with parents, especially during the season. And outside of maybe 6 or 7 college programs, you're not in a situation at Youngstown State or anywhere in the Horizon League or mid-major basketball where every player is expected to be an early entry NBA draft kid. So you're preparing these kids for more than basketball. And I think parents, even in the short-sightedness, want their kids to be successful, to average double figures, to play 25 minutes as a freshman. More than anything, when they step back and look at the broad picture, they want to see that their kid is becoming a more mature, well-rounded young man in terms of basketball and outside of basketball. And the fact that you bring those families in is very interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've each stop, every step of the way, you encounter different players, and then with those players you meet different parents, different aunts, uncles, grandparents. You have those relationships with for you for the rest of your life, starting at Cincinnati and Walsh and obviously West Virginia, Fairmont State. There's all those names are still in my phone book. You still talk to those people on a regular basis. They check up on you, you check up on them. Some not as much as others because people are busy, but I think that's how these kids make it, is having a good support team, being open and honest. Most college coaches aren't going to take calls on playing time throughout the year, but it does happen. I think every coach in the country would say it has happened to them. Somebody's not happy, but at the same time, most of those people aren't at our practices. They're not with us daily, so they don't see what's going on from day to day. So you hope that they just have that trust in you, that we're doing the right thing. We're all trying to achieve the same goal, which is winning, not only on the court, but winning forever. And it's always worked out.
Right. I mean, honesty is the best policy there. I mean, I remember I had, a guy who's like my little brother, Willie Moore, and he played at Oregon his freshman year and ended up deciding to go to the mid-major level. But his freshman year, he's all the way out there and he doesn't have a lot of family checking in. So I talked to Coach Altman several times, and I really, really valued that because Coach Altman was always, I never asked him, is Willie going to play? But we always had a very honest correspondence regarding, he would say, well, he hasn't been very good in practice. He's been getting down on himself and here's why, or, he didn't do this well in school this week. And it was always very, very honest. And I mean, I think that's the policy that when you have that, even if you have to have somewhat of an uncomfortable conversation about minutes, you're going to have people on the same page more often than not.
Yeah, I think most people want honesty. They want to be told what's going on, what the truth is. And a lot of times I think that the players and the coaches know more than the people that aren't there from day to day.
Sure. And I mean, there's another thing is, the kid, when they call their parent to complain about playing time, they're probably only telling part of the story.
Yeah, sometimes, sometimes it takes, maybe even some film or, just some explaining, hey, this is where he's on the depth chart and this is where we can get him to, and this is where we see him in year 2, 3, and 4. I think very few freshmen, true freshmen at the mid-major level come in and have a huge, huge impact. There are a lot of them out there that have, but a lot of them have even redshirted. I saw it firsthand in the Mountain East Conference. A lot of those guys that would redshirt would go on to have great 4-year careers, and then you end up getting a master's degree. So I think sometimes people look at redshirting as a bad thing. I think it's the greatest thing in the world for the majority of these kids. You get to mature for a year, you get to learn the system for a year, you get another year of free education, and you get to stay in college one more year.
And also, if you want to look at it the other way academically, you can also slow down a little bit. And if you're somebody who didn't come from the highest rated high school, if you haven't been the greatest student in the past and you take a redshirt year, now you've got 5 years to get 4 years worth of credit. That can be a really good situation.
Absolutely. Because you know how it is, that first year is so hard on them physically and going through the training that it does slow down. I think you got a great point there.
Right. And, we know people who coach college basketball, been in college basketball, know that the freshmen right now think that this is the hardest time of the year, but the real hardest time of the year is the couple of weeks off in between, whatever they call Christmas break and second semester, 2-a-days. That's when it really turns up.
Yeah, I think that's hard. And then I also think it's hard when you got to put, your jersey on and you got to have scouting reports and you're guarding other people. And, sometimes you may be playing 3 games in 3 days. Most high school guys aren't used to that. And there's a game plan that goes in, after the game, and you've got to get ready for the next one. And, there's all sort of obstacles, for everybody. But certainly on freshmen, it's a little bit more difficult.
And I think, looking back here towards the end of this podcast, one thing, if I was a parent, if I was a player, if I was an AAU coach, that I would take note of is that in all these things that you mentioned in earning playing time or not earning playing time and waiting it out, you never once have mentioned athletic ability to shoot the basketball. But, it goes to show that the evaluation period, the recruiting process, the scouting process, the doing official visits and getting to know the families, it has much more to do with character, with assessing fit and personality fit than just raw basketball talent.
Yeah, I think that's why, we do a lot of different things. We try to get out there as much as we can. We try to get them on our campus as much as we can as far as unofficial visits. I think the NCAA, the new rules are awesome with these kids being able to take visits younger and younger, official visits, because you really get to know the individuals. You really get to know the parents and their expectations. And I think, recruiting is the lifeblood of your program. If you're not doing it every day, you'll be sloppy. You end up taking guys you really don't know that may not fit your system. But I think it takes a little time. I think when you inherit a program, that's the biggest lesson that I've learned. It takes a little time to figure out, exactly what you need. And then once you get it going, your veteran guys kind of coach your team. And as a head coach, you kind of stay out of the way. And let those older guys do a lot of the coaching as well.
Well, when I look at different college coaches, I can't tell you who the best X and O guys are because I look at that and I understand that that's more of a staff thing. It's not just one coach. But, one thing I can talk about is guys who I think are great evaluators, guys who I think are great communicators in recruiting and developing relationships. And, those are the guys who call people like me. They call high school coaches, even if it's, I'm recruiting a kid from Cincinnati Elder, but I'm going to call the head coach of Cincinnati Moeller who's coached against them to see what they think. The guys who I think are successful long-term in the recruiting aspect of college basketball, which I see day in and day out, are the guys who are communicative, who understand how to ask questions, how to find all their sources. And then something you touched on earlier, which is the guys who also call you to check in and they try to create a personal relationship. And I've talked on this podcast before, there's a number of, people on my phone in terms of college coaches who, when they call me, I know exactly what they're calling about is to ask about one kid. And there's other guys who I know are calling, to ask about a couple things, but also to check in and, share what's going on in their lives and see what's going on in your life.
Yeah, I think anytime, Corey, you go into a school, most high school coaches are going to not say too many negative things about their players. So you gotta do your background. You've got to talk to security guards. You got to talk to teachers. You got to talk to maybe a janitor. You got to talk to guidance counselor. One of the things we like to look at is attendance. Are they on time? Are they disrupting the class? How are they learning? How do they affect their teammates? How do they make others better? Those sorts of things. I think the more you do that at an early age, you're not going to miss on the type of guy that you want for your culture.
Right. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's your job to teach him basketball. And you can take a kid, like I know Nas Bohannon, is very, very well thought of in the Cleveland, Lorain area as a great person. And you can teach Nas to become a better shooter, a better ball handler, but you, Coach Calhoun, can't teach him to be on time and everything. I mean, if he doesn't know that going in, you're going to have an uphill battle. You might be able to help it a little bit, but the character stuff has to be instilled because you only get him for 4 years, not 18.
Yeah, we knew, what we were doing with Nas. He came in with 60, college credits. That is a remarkable high school career. We knew what the impact that he had on the city of Lorain and the pride that he had to get that program over the top. And everywhere you checked, whether it was his teacher, another coach within his conference, they all said the same thing. He has great leadership qualities. He's very, very prideful in the city of Lorain. And we felt like that he could be kind of one of the big pieces to help us get this thing going at Youngstown. And that's exactly what he did.
Well, and he's a kid, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that, the way you do things reminds me of, some of the things Coach Huggins does, reminds me of some of the Bearcat teams growing up and just, the way Nas Bohannon carries himself on a basketball court. He's a hard-nosed, hard hat type of kid and comes from a community in Lorain that's very, very much like that. And, Youngstown's a hard-working community, and those are the type of kids you target. And, for your coaching style, those are the type of kids that you're probably going to win the most games with.
Yeah, there's no question. A lot of these kids you recruit, are going to fit your personality. And I think, those are the most successful teams. Each team's they're going to take on a different personality each year. But when you're establishing a culture, you really want to establish it with hard work. So we want a bunch of guys that are going to be excited to be in the gym in October. We got 30 days here before we start. It's tough because you're trying to get a lot of things in a short period of time. You got to find guys that love basketball, love being part of a team, that are selfless. And I think that, in year two, we feel a lot more comfortable about the direction that we're trying to get to.
Okay. Well, that's great, Coach. Well, that's the time we have. Again, I want to thank you very much for coming on. You've been a great friend and contact for me in this game for many years, dating back to Fairmont. I love the fact that, being a Cleveland guy, having spent time in Cincinnati, having spent time in Canton at Walsh, now at Youngstown, you've recruited the hell out of Ohio. And again, you're the first Division I head coach to come on this show. So we really appreciate you and thank you for coming on.
Guys, I really appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate that I was the first. Probably won't be the last. But really, really appreciate you having me on. Go Penguins.
All right, guys, that was Coach Jerrod Calhoun, head coach, Youngstown State University. We're going to wish them a great season coming up. For Jason Morrow, our producer, my name's Corey Albertson. You guys listen to the Triple Double Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by PlayEasy.com. For players, coaches, or casual athletes looking to book a sports facility, as well as owners and managers of sports facilities, PlayEasy.com is the new one-stop site for streamlined services. If you're looking for a place to practice, play, host your tournament, camp, or other, simply go to PlayEasy.com and create a booking request for your area. Your request will go out to surrounding facilities who will respond with their best offer. Once you receive the offer that best fits your needs, book the facility and you're ready to play. For facility owners and managers, PlayEasy puts the power in your hands to maximize the usage and visibility of your facility. Register your facility for free today at PlayEasy.com. PlayEasy.com is the booking site built by athletes, coaches, and facility managers, and is proud to help bring you the Triple Double Podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Anago Cleaning Systems. Are you tired of struggling in a dead-end job? If so, Anago Cleaning Systems has what you're looking for, an opportunity to go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. With franchising opportunities available for as little as a $2,500 down payment, purchasing an Anago franchise has never been easier. Once you own your Anago franchise, you're licensed to clean commercial facilities all around the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus areas with the support of Anago's sales, quality control, operational, and accounting staff. Call 513-332-0033 today for your opportunity to be your own boss and grow your own commercial cleaning company under the guidance of Anago's proven and successful system. Again, call 513-332-0033 to learn more. With Anago, your future starts today.